Welcome everyone. Thanks for attending the tech workshop on working with high accuracy data with Collector for ArcGIS. My name is Kevin. This is Morgan. We're both on the we're both product engineers with the apps team specializing with Collector. Slight speaker change, and so Doug is over in the audience over there, and so is Jeff if he's somewhere around here. So, quick little audience survey for you guys. Who's already using Collector with high accuracy in production right now? Oh, nice. Just where low accuracy is important.
Maybe just with the external receivers.
Okay, so what we want to get through today is I want to go through a quick introduction on Collector and kind of how it fits into the field GIS workflow. We're going to go through some use cases. We're also going to discuss getting started with Collector and kind of some considerations to take, especially for high accuracy workflows that you should be aware of. Then we're going to go through a demo on setting up Collector for high accuracy data collection, specifically what types of settings to use, and taking those things that we considered into the actual app. And then we're going to do another demo on doing some field data collection workflows and kind of putting those settings to the test. Then we're going to go into some tools and resources where kind of want to make your workflows a little easier in some aspects. So we're going to kind of show you kind of some available tools for you to use. And then we're going to do some Q&A at the end where you guys can ask any questions that you have. So field GIS, we're probably all pretty familiar with them. Some may not be. So GIS traditionally has been an office workflow, but with the suite of apps that Esri provides, you can now take that GIS into the field and integrate it with all these different task-driven apps. Like Workforce, you can assign tasks from the office to your field crews, maintain that communication seamlessly from the field to the office, and then use Collector to do your field workflows to actually capture those assets or do any asset inventory that you may have to do per those assignments from the back office dispatcher. So they all can be used in conjunction with one another to a complete field workflow. So it also makes seamless integration with your teams back in the office. So specifically with Collector, most of you already are aware that it works with web maps. It's a web map-based app. And those web maps can be hosted through ArcGIS Online or your enterprise ArcGIS. And it supports those capabilities that web maps offer. We have capabilities of working offline. So if you're in areas of spotty or no connectivity, we maintain your workflows with offline data that you can then synchronize when you get back into a Wi-Fi connected environment. But for this presentation, we're going to focus specifically on the high accuracy GPS aspect of Collector and how you can set it up, and again, some things to consider when you're working in those areas. So Morgan's going to discuss some areas of how it's currently being used in the field and some workflows that are currently being used.
So currently, Collector is actively used by the collect and maintain the data and for the access and also inspect the access status. And also people will replace their paper-based form with the kind of digital format and then use Collector to capture observations, survey, etc. And during the emergency response time, they will go out to field and perform a rapid assessment with the Collectors. After we introduced the high-accuracy stuff, and then we have seen more and more users using a Collector to improve the accuracy and currency of the assets, and also the asset system can include like the traffic signs, and also include like the hydrant, water pipes, etc. And meanwhile, we start seeing the users using the Collector to collect the ground control points for UAV, and then through this way, they can have more kind of local, affordable, high image products delivered with with a Collector and also with that kind of local drones. And let me share some story with our users. So Travis Anderson is a civil engineer in the small water district, and he's rarely used the GIS, but he joined our ArcGIS beta like last year, and then like similar to him, a lot of users have a need to kind of try to build an access system for their assets that includes like the hydrants, pipes, etc. So with this kind of using this ArcGIS beta, he used Aero 100 units with iPad, and then the iPad has a cellular network connections connect to the Ohio RTK networks, and then he can achieve the accuracy like 8 centimeters, etc. And collector will preserve this level of accuracies from the receivers into the web map and into his asset inventory systems. So we definitely see some like successful with the Travis Anderson's. And here's another story like in the Los Angeles Coliseums. So we kind of go to the fields using the collector to collect the ground control points for the drone to map products. And then we will use the collector with like Trimble R2 receiver, and then the R2 receiver will leverage the RTX services, and then we get like the software accuracies, and then we also put some soccer cone on the ground as a like ground mark and then we will go use the collector and go to each soccer cones and to collect those kind of ground markers, and we'll import those ground control points into the drone to map product and to improve the accuracy of the 3D image models.
Okay, so some things that we want to kind of jump into right now after hearing some use cases is some considerations that you should be aware of, and maybe some questions that you didn't know you needed to ask when you want to get into a high accuracy workflow. If you're already in a high accuracy workflow where GPS is a major factor, you want to be aware of these certain things. So number one, that's always going to be your driving force with any high accuracy workflow is your project accuracy requirements. Now this project accuracy requirements is going to drive what type of receiver or correction services that you're going to need for your project. What is it going to be the same? Is every project going to require the same level of accuracy? Is each project going to be a different level of accuracy? If it's more of a like project-based type work. And then you want to look at the supported receivers. So not only the supported receivers for what operating system that you're using, but also that it supports what project requirements you have that you need or may need it in the future. And then we get into correction services. Now, any type of high accuracy workflow requires a different correction service. And each one of these points we'll get into a little bit more in this section of the presentation. But with a correction service, that's going to get you down to that centimeter level accuracy or sub-meter accuracy, whatever the project requires. Then your desired base map for your collection. So is the base map going to be hosted in ArcGIS Online? And is it going to be cached using your own tiled service, or is it going to be a tile package that you're going to build using your own data with your own coordinate system that's local to your area? And that kind of gets into my next point, which is datum transformations, which is something we're going to stress a lot throughout this presentation because it's very important to maintain your accuracy, because you don't want to have a high accuracy workflow and have your data be shifted by a datum, incorrect use of a datum. So we're going to kind of go to some of those areas too. So we work with a lot of different receivers, a lot of different hardware vendors that range from consumer grade receivers to high accuracy survey grade receivers that you can use, or even all-in-one handhelds, such as like a Leica Z20, for example, that you could use. So there's a lot of different variety with the types of receivers that are available that offer their own different correction services as well that you could research for your projects. So I want to get into the differential correction area. So obviously we know that it improves the accuracy from your receiver. So any receiver, no matter the quality of the receiver, without a correction service is going to just be autonomous or uncorrected data, which is, could be upwards to 5+ meters. So you definitely want to tighten that accuracy with a correction service. And a lot of times those services require subscriptions or connections like a cellular connection to like a base station, through like an N-trip connection. So definitely when you're looking at the correction services, you want to be be cognizant of your environment where you're going to be. If you're going to be in a true disconnected environment, then using a cellular connection to a base station isn't going to probably work for you. So you're going to need to probably a satellite-based correction service, for example. And then optionally, you can configure these correction services through third-party apps, which are usually offered from the hardware vendors, that you can set up these RTK connections. And in configuring your subscriptions, you need to be able to understand what your map's projection is and what projection that correction service is using, so you can understand how to set up your datum transformations. So that information should be provided to you when you make these connections to those services. So with datum transformation, I want to spend a little time on this slide because there's a lot of areas in a workflow where transformations are introduced, not just with collector, but ultimately it could, when you get back in the office and you look at your data in a map, if it's shifted, you want to know at what point along the workflow that shift was introduced. In the diagram here you see on DT1, that's the transformation that's defined in the location profile, which we'll get into in a little bit more. The location profile is where you determine your transformations in collectors, where you set them up. That's when you need to set it up between your correction service and your web map. Then you can also have a transformation that's introduced between the web map and your web layer. So if you published your layer in, say, a particular projection like NAD83 and you're using an ArcGIS Online web map that's in Web Mercator, there's also a transformation that's been used there. And then also you have your data in your database. There could be a transformation there as well. So if you're publishing from desktop and you have, your data frame isn't different than, say, your data, there's a transformation in your desktop software too. So there's areas around where transformations are introduced. And for those who aren't aware, I want to kind of show you that we have geographic transformations available as far as through our like a document that I want to show you if you're not already familiar with through our normal desktop software documentation, where I want to explain to you kind of how that works. So if you go into right here, this is in our desktop help resource center under what are map projections. If you scroll down to where we have our geographic transformation section, there's a PDF document that we can go ahead and open up. And what I kind of wanted to highlight here, and I'm going to kind of search for a commonly used one, say like 2011. And so like this example right here where it says ITRF 2008 to NAD83. So I kind of want to just show you how you would use this if you were not sure what type of transformation to use. Not only does it cover the area of use, let me kind of scroll this down a little bit. Under the area of use, so you would want to determine where you're collecting your data, what transformation to apply, but also, and more importantly, is this accuracy column. So each transformation has its own accuracy associated with it that will play a role in your data collection workflow. So this is a good document to look at if you want to understand the different levels of transformations that are available that collector can leverage. So you want to understand what accuracies may be introduced if you choose an older one versus a newer one, and things like that. So let's kind of get back into here. So right now, Morgan's going to go over and explain to you and demo how to configure these items in Collector.
So I already opened the collectors. So before you start high-risk collections, you would like to set your project requirements. And then, so for example, you have a project requirement like 50 centimeters. So right now it shows imperial unit system. So you can change into metrics, and this one it will impact the unit settings on the location accuracy, but also impact the batch I'm going to show you later on. And so, for example, this one, my project requirement accuracy is 50 centimeters. And then after you set the project accuracy, the requirement accuracies, then these will make sure the features collected by the field workers will meet these accuracy requirements. And also, so after you set this one, then you would like to start using the external receivers. And so because we are indoors, so I cannot get the GPS signal here, so I will use file GPS to demonstrate it. But the idea, the workflow will be seamless. Okay, so first, by default is using the integrated receivers. So using an integrated receiver is a user location from the devices, but you like to use like external receiver and to improve the accuracy. Then here, let me just show the workflow a little bit. So I can add the receivers. So if the receiver has been Bluetooth paired or maybe USB connected, it will show on the disk, on my receiver disk. And here, from demonstration perspective, I just pick the file GPS. But for the other purpose, when you use Bluetooth receiver, it will show the Bluetooth receiver. This is the name. This on here. Until continues, and then let me just give the devices. Then here, there's an additional setting here. This is entire height. So for the people who are interested in the vertical part, then remember to set up your pole height plus your face center of the antenna. And then for my demonstration here, I'm not interested on the vertical on this one, so I just leave it as default, as a 0 here. And I add this file GPS, and I will add it, and you can switch to these receivers. And in the Kevin's presentation, he mentioned about the consideration of the data transmissions. So that's the path settings on the location profiles. So by default, we will assume the location from the receiver is always WH84. So this is valid for most of the time, but when I deal with the hierarchy stuff, the location for the receiver will determine by the correction services you are using. So in the United States, like several base stations, they will provide services in 93, 2011. They need to set the location profile to correctly project the location into the map. Let me set this up. Because I'm using our own base station when I capture this file. So our Esri base station is one of our cost base stations. It's based on 93, 2011. So here I'm going to add the profiles. So the first one, you will set your receiver correction services datums. And then it's 93, 2011. So you can search by the name. So here is this one. And the second step is set your coordinate system used by your map. And this one, it is based on your base map to use. And a lot of users will use the Esri base map. This is WGS84 world indicators. And for the coordinate system, there's two types of coordinate system. One is a geographic one, geographic coordinate systems, and the other is a project coordinate system. So if I'm using the ArcGIS Online base map, most of the time is a project coordinate system. So remember, if you by default it's on here tab, and you just kind of switch to the project one, and then search for web indicator one. You can search for based on WKID you use, and then W84 web indicator is a 3857. So I can quickly find the one I needed, and then table ones. And this step, because in documentation, the Kevin shows the coordinate system have the accuracy, like the metadata, and also have aerial use. And this kind of screen will help you define the area you are working on, and it will help the algorithms to sort out the list for you. And then instead you kind of go through the long list of documentation to find the best one to use, and then you just kind of define the area you're working on, and then this will help the algorithm to find the best one for you. So we are in the San Diego area, and then continues. So you can see the list here, and then you put the W84 ITI-OA as the first one. But if I change the area to use is different, for example, for the whole world, then you will give a different list. So the list is sorted by the suitability of the data transformation that you use. So if you are not familiar with this one, then you will choose the area to be used, and then you will pick the first one. If you are not comfortable with pick the one, then we have a suggestion for you. So let me go back to the San Diego area. Then continue and select the first one, and then you will give them a meaningful names. and edit. Then you switch to these profiles. So now you're done our configuration to get ready to hide data collections. Let me switch back to the canvas.
Okay, so just to kind of recap a little bit about what Morgan just shared. So location provider, it's located in app settings, and it's supported for integrated receivers, Bluetooth receivers, and on Windows we also have support for serial-based receivers. So a little bit on the receivers over here on the bottom right, you see I have like a little whitelisted list for iOS providers. So for whitelisting, just want to give you a little, for those of you who aren't familiar with what that process means, so iOS is a little more strict in this respect with types of supported receivers. Receivers have to be, hardware has to be Apple certified from the vendors. And then once it's certified, be supported through Apple, then the receiver manufacturer plus our app has to be, they whitelist each other basically, so that now we have a handshake to talk to each other. So it's a little more strict on the type of receivers. If you're using an iOS, if you're using iOS as your operating system of choice for the field, you want to make sure that the receiver you're looking at is supported for that platform. So like Trimble R1, R2, EOS positioning, or Bad Elf, for example, those are some areas where those are supported on iOS. So things you want to kind of look at. Back to location provider, that's where you connect to your named receiver after you've set up that connection, and also where you would specify your antenna height if you're considered with that vertical. So in location profile, again, this is where you define your transformation from your receiver to your map. And so therefore the input coordinate system is going to be your correction service, and it's always a geographical coordinate system. So if you're working with a DOT and you're trying to, it's always going to be a GCS, not a projected coordinate system that you're going to be looking for in that area. The output, however, can be geographic or projected depending on what your map is in, which is oftentimes determined by your base map. So that's why in the beginning I said if you're using your own base map and you want to use, say, instead of using Web Mercator, you want to use your base map in Natty through 2011 or some other coordinate system, you would set that up accordingly to point to that. And then the method is the transformation selection. So like the little map window that allows you to define your area of use so that we could correctly and accurately order that list for you to choose from rather than having to go through that long PDF document to find the right one to use. And then also, custom and grid-based transformations are not supported. So these are, these are just some limitations right now. And then for the name of your profile, you want to make sure it's a memorable name. If you're working in areas of, if you're working with different coordinate systems, you want to be able to quickly find that name in your list. You can go back into the details of each after you've built the profiles. If you didn't, say if you called it test and didn't know what it was called, you can go back into the details and find out how you've configured it, which is the profile details screenshot on the right. So you can always go back and find out how it was originally configured, rather than removing it and setting it up again. So location accuracy. So we have support for imperial units or metric units, feet and inches or meters and centimeters, depending on what your project requirements are. So you have the ability to type in your accuracy rather than just choosing it from a predefined list of accuracy values. So you can actually just type in what your project requirements are. And then now Morgan's going to actually go through a field data collection workflow to put those settings in use.
So after you set those settings, now you are going to start using the map to collect the features. Okay, let me open a map. So on the bottom right, this is the GPS badge. It will show the accuracy you receive from the receivers. So when this just now it shows red, it means doesn't mean the required accuracies. When it shows green, it means the location from receiver mean your required accuracy. So it gives field workers like kind of you can look at the badge. They can quickly know, okay, the location I guess good or bad. And then when you turn on the badge, it gives you a more detailed view of location from the receiver. It kind of can have a more detailed view of receiver status. It includes horizontal accuracy, vertical accuracy, and also the fixed type you got from the receivers. And also it can tell you the collection age, when is last time you get the collection data from the services, and also have some satellite use invisible. We also have a kind of give you the hint about the location profile you are using right now. And this is a badge, and now we can collect the features. Because this is kind of like the leak inspections features. You find a leak in these locations, you can tell on the features, and then this will use the location from the external receiver instead of an integrated receiver. So you will use the location from a receiver, and then you submit it. Then you can check the location. I already collect some of them. And this is the kind of location you will collect, and then you will see we have a GPS metadata fields associated with the feature you collected. So for people in the office, they can kind of QC the data they collect from the field. So the data field includes the receiver name. This will usually based on the Bluetooth name, and also the accuracy you got from the receivers, and then also have some lead long attitude, etc., and then the fixed type and the time. So these will have for people in the office, when they assign the workers to the field, they can feel kind of more relaxed in the office, and then while they know the status of the field workers. And also because we are talking about the high accuracy stuff, and then we know in the past there's some limitation with like how far you can zoom into the base map. So with this kind of high accuracy release in 10.4, and then we allow you to zoom in further into the base map to overcome the scale limit on the base map. For example, I can zoom in really far away, and then it can really go down to really small area, like maybe a few meters or even centimeters. So you can identify the features that are really close together through this kind of base map over zoom behavior. Then you return back to Kevin to recap.
Okay, so GPS badge, it's the number one useful visual feedback that the field user is going to get for a field data collection. Lets them know if they're meeting their accuracy requirements, depending on their settings. Lets them expand the badge to be able to display certain information to keep on track with what actually they need to be doing. Maintain their fixed type. If you're using a high accuracy workflow, oftentimes the fixed type may float in and out or drop back to less accurate fixed type. So it lets them be able to visually see what they're actually getting. Base map over zoom. If you're in the in ArcGIS Online map viewer, you can only zoom in so far. But we've implemented the over zooming functionality for high accuracy workflows, so you can kind of override that minimum scale range to continue to zoom in. If you're using centimeter level accuracy, a lot of times from a high zoom level they'll be clustered and you can't really tell the difference. So it's nice to be able to zoom in that level. And then the GPS metadata fields, you want to capture that raw GPS information from the receiver and attach it to each of your point features. So then you can, like Morgan said, go back in and QC it and find out, hey, this one is not the right fixed type. Let's recollect this one, or we need to tighten up our accuracy a little bit with maybe a correction service or things of that nature. So we're going to jump in with that for some tools and resources. Morgan and I are going to kind of go back and forth showing you a few different ones that we have. One thing I want to kind of start with is with the new release of ArcGIS Online. So we worked with the online team to kind of integrate the creation of these metadata fields if you build services through online. So let me kind of show you how to do that real quick and kind of where that would be. So in ArcGIS Online, and this is available to anyone who wants to use it, you go into your My Content page, and then what you would do is you would then go to this Create button. Some of you may or may not be familiar with it. If you've ever built like the location tracking layer, this is the same location where you would go for that. You go to Create, and you want to go to Create Feature Layer, and then each of these three tabs at the top, now each of these three tabs will generate new services. We have Morgan, like I said, Morgan will go into some additional tools if you have existing data that you want to just add new fields to. But if you want to generate new services and you want to append these fields to it, you have these pre-built templates that are available to you to use. That on this end, if you're not familiar with these templates, definitely something to go through and look at, because there's a lot of templates in a lot of different areas field use. If you need data, don't have data, if you want to start with these services and build off of them, they have their own symbology and their own schemas for you to use as well. One of the templates that we've recently added also for this release is our new ground control template that I'll show you how that would work with the fields. And the fields are available to any template that has a point layer in it. So if you're working with a template that's pure line and polygon, this option that I'm going to show you won't be available. So if you go in here and you hit create, and then you see this little checkbox at the bottom, it says capture GPS receiver information. This adds all 18 metadata fields to your data and configures the pop-up for those fields. So you would just need to add it to a new map and then configure the pop-up for the rest of your layers. So then this also works, again, that's for a new template, but if you want to add, say, from an existing layer, say if you have existing data that, say, you already have added, say, 12, before we release the new fields that we'll get into in a minute, you have already a certain amount of fields already on a layer that you just want to add the new fields to. You can choose your existing layer in your My Content, and then it just spins up a new service with the fields on it. So if you chose, like, say, an existing layer, like I'll just choose this random one that I've created in the past. This has points on it, and then I can see that I have that option there too. So it's not just, it's your data. You can use your existing data to add these fields to it. Existing services, I should say. We're going to go back over to Morgan. He's going to show you some other tools available.
So Kevin shows like our new ArcGIS Online option to kind of allow you to enable the metadata fields for the services. This is really good for collect the new data. If you already, and also there's another tools in ArcGIS Pro. Let's call it ArcGIS Solution Deployment Tools. And these tools can also publish the template maybe to your portal, etc. Then you open this deployment tool quickly. And then you also, in the recent update, you also have the metadata fields available for this kind of ArcGIS solution deployment tools. Can allow you to have another way to deploy those metadata fields. And other than that, there's another third one. This is we have script available to help you to automate, like, create those attributes and also configure the pop-up in your existing data maybe in geographic, etc. Let me point out where this. You can find the script. Because in our help doc, we have under the create map, we have one section about the record the GPS metadata fields. And this, you can tap on these config feature services to store GPS metadata. And there's a Python script link. And this is a link to our GitHub page. And then we have a character utility tools available. And then we have already reorganized these utility tools to be used in Pro and to be used in RMap. We can organize this way. And then so you allow you to add the metadata fields to your existing data, and also we have an option to configure the pop-up in the web maps, which kind of try to streamline the workflow to configure the metadata fields, and then through this way you have you can get those fields in the office. And also when you look at this tool, that's called the Project C tools. Let me spend a little bit of time on these tools. Go back to slides. So the way to use this Project tool is, one, you can use as a workaround to the z-value captures. Because currently, character doesn't support the z-value geometry. But in the metadata field, we allow you to store the additive value as a part of attributes. And so when you store the additive, we already consider the antenna height into account. So the additive we store, it is the height above soil. So and also maybe some user would like to interested in the orthometric height, or called the mean sea level height. And this Project G tool will also leverage for the vertical data transformation capability in RMap and ArcGIS Pro, and transform the location into with the vertical into the orthometric height. And the difference between the orthometric height and episodic height is about the geodetic models. So this is a kind of one way of use the project tool as a workaround for the Z-value support. And the additional use of a project tool, it is you can use for like correct ground control points for the drones. Because Kevin, in his demo, he shows we introduced the ground control feature templates. And with this template, and then you can configure those metadata fields, and then also you can, after you collect those ground control points, and then you can input these services, and then work with the project G tools and convert into some orthometric heights, etc., and to be suitable for those like the drone to map applications or other applications. And because when you import those ground control points, they will require your vertical data transformation in a certain ones. So you can use this tool to convert a location to fit the needs of those kind of software, the drone software. There are also other resources, because in this talk, we're talking about a lot about the data transformation coordinate system. So if you are not familiar with them, maybe you can go to this tech workshops to learn a little bit. I think the first one maybe happen at the same time, but I think you can watch the recording when you go back to kind of learn more about the coordinate system and data transformations. And there's also a book like Naya Data in ArcGIS is a good one. I remember the author used to be a neighbor with Kevin's. And
yeah, she's in the tech support area, so her name is Margaret if you want to go and get your book signed.
So maybe Kevin would like to talk about what's the news. That's okay.
Okay, so a little bit what is new in the recent release of Collector that we released in June. So we introduced GPS averaging, so that as a lot of industries have this as a requirement that we wanted to support for those users who actually need to have a certain amount of points that they average in their field workflows. It's also could be used as a best practice workflow. And with the introduction of GPS averaging, we added 4 new metadata fields, as you can see on the right, that will capture data only when averaging is enabled. So the fields that Morgan showed you, some of those fields will be on or off depending on if averaging is enabled, because some of them just don't apply to an averaging workflow, which is all described in our documentation in more depth. One field that I want to kind of point out here is we included a standard deviation field. When you use averaging, the point that you're going to end up with is the averaged location. But we included the standard deviation measurement as a way for you to use it as a quality indicator of your average. So we provide a value it's actually a measure value that determines more or less like a numerical representation of what your point cluster would look like. If you wanted to see, if there's any outliers in your data, or if you need to, you can use this value to determine if you need to recollect that data. So it's a way for you to determine any outliers in your averaging that you may have captured. And likewise with the utilities that Morgan showed in the scripts and in ArcGIS Online, they've all been updated to include the averaging fields, so you can get them when you use those methods. A little bit about what's coming with Collector. In Q3 of this year, we're going to be adding support for Trimble Catalyst with the Android operating system, which if we do have a receiver at our booth if you want to come down and take a look at it, or obviously you can definitely stop by the Trimble booth and talk to those guys about it in more depth. And we're going to be adding support for a 95% confidence interval that you would have the option. Again, this is per project requirements and feedback we've gotten from a lot of our users that have to report on a certain confidence interval when their accuracy values. So we're going to include support for that. And in 2018, we will be adding support for Z values as well. And then Morgan's going to leave you with some takeaways that we want to kind of hammer home for you guys.
So with the high-C character support, now you can access the accurate location more reliably, because the character can work with multiple choices of the receivers. So for people in the field, they can have a badge to really indicate the location you get from a receiver is really good accuracies. And also for people in the office, they can use GPS metadata fields to build the confidence of location they collected. And also we will share some consideration when you do the high-speed data collections. You need to consider not only consider the receiver to be used, but also need to consider what the collection services choices you are going to use. Because receiver alone won't be able to, may not be able to achieve the level of accuracy you get. So you need to consider what kind of collection services you use. Maybe there's some free one like Sparse, or maybe there's some more like the subscription services you need to consider when you have the high solutions. And also like data transformation is kind of play the big role of it. So especially when we are doing the centimeter accuracies, the data transformation is a part you need to consider. Maybe when you do a 1 meter accuracies, maybe it's okay to just leave it as default, but kind of depends on the project requirement, etc. And also we share some successful story about using character for like hydrant corrections, or you can correct ground control point for a drone. And we really look forward to your success story using your own projects. So we appreciate your feedback. So please take a survey on Esri Events app. Now we can open up for the Q&A.
Yeah, so I work with a group of users. We're disconnected. I'm the GIS support person, and I'm building the maps. They're consuming them through Collector, collecting data, right? And we're in different locations. The specific question I have is you mentioned building and configuring the profiles for these devices. Is that something that can be built by or configured by me as their GIS resource and then distributed out to them, because they're not really going to want to get in the guts of that? And that's one of the things we're struggling with. I have to walk them through that this time.
So just to repeat the question for those who didn't hear it, in a disconnected offline workflow where you have multiple field users in different locations, the question is if you can, from a GIS admin perspective as opposed to an individual field user perspective, if you can pre-build all the location profiles for your devices rather than having them do it individually. Did you want to?
Also, to these questions, so currently, right now, it's kind of responsibility will rely on the field worker to configure their own location profile. But we definitely have a kind of see the needs for large deployment and try to lower barrier. Then you can also author the maybe location profile in the field and then deploy those location file into maybe different users or etc. And we have have some. Internally, we have some character concepts, and then this will be as we work with next generation of character, and those things will be taken into consideration. Maybe Doc would like to. Okay, yeah. So basically, we also see the need to kind of deploy the location profile, and then so it won't be for this generation of character, but for the next generations. Maybe Doug would like to chime in something.
Yeah, I think just a couple of notes in addition to that. It is something that we know is a pain point from a distribution and sort of GIS management side. So we are looking at ways to do that. There are some things that people are doing today, rather than in terms of just a bit of a cheat sheet and sending them out with the well-known IDs to type in, which is rather than trying to sort of sift through the list where you've got 8 that say Web Mercator or different texts where they might make mistakes, just kind of giving them a one-page handout or an email saying, hey, type in 3857 rather than Web Mercator has been helpful, but it is a pain point that we know you guys have, and we're working on finding ways to allow you to distribute that to your field workforce.
Okay, maybe.
Oh, go ahead.
I know it's a stupid question, but how does your location profile actually going to help in terms of data management? Basically, you're going to have 15, 20 different location profiles, so it's kind of cumbersome to manage all this.
Okay. So the question was, I'm trying to reiterate it as best I can, is how does managing multiple location profiles help from a data management perspective. I mean, conceptually, by itself, it's going to maintain your level of accuracy because it's going to transform it onto your map rather than introducing a shift. So in that respect alone, that's going to maintain your data rather than having to go into the back office and see that all of your data is consistently shifted in one direction. It's going to maintain the accuracy from your receiver. But for the most part, unless you're more of a contractor, maybe working in different areas of the world, for the most part, you're going to be typically paired to one type of device. I mean, this could vary from workflow to workflow, but from a lot of the feedback we get, it's usually one type of receiver, one location you're capturing data in. So in most cases, you may only have one profile, but I do see that as long as they apply the correct profile for the area that they're actually in, then that's kind of, again, that's back on the field user to choose where they're actually, the correct area of use. And it kind of points back to then how you would name your profiles. If you say you have 20 different location profiles, you want to make sure that they're named, not just like test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to make sure that they're actually named for the area of use so that they can accurately pick the right ones. Correct. Again, it's based on the correction service to your map. And if it's the same map, or if you're using the same suite of base maps, you may be using 10 different base maps, but they all have the same Web Mercator base map, then your profiles may all be the same. So maybe the one profile with just multiple maps. So, no problem. You're welcome.
Are the metadata fields supported in ArcGIS Enterprise, or is it just ArcGIS Online only?
If the question is if the metadata fields are supported in ArcGIS Online only or also in Enterprise. When you use them in in this case, you'd want to use the scripts if you're going to be using like your own enterprise data. If you use ArcGIS Online, it's going to spin up a new hosted service. Even if you use an existing service from, like, say, ArcGIS Enterprise server on the back end, it's going to spin up a new hosted feature service. So in that respect, you would probably want to use the scripts to point to your service. Some of the scripts are pointing to hosted service. I mean, we can get into the details maybe on one-on-one a little bit more, but you more or less rely on the scripts to update your enterprise database.
I mean, the fields, just so you guys know, the fields are just they're simple fields. They're well-known fields. Basically, so however you add them to your feature layer, that could be a layer that you host on your own GIS server, could be a layer that's hosted in ArcGIS Online. The presence of those fields, we are looking for the name and the type of those fields. So within collectors. So if those fields exist, then we will populate them regardless of where that data is stored.
Okay, no question.
Web Mercator has been mentioned many times as a projection. It's not conformal. Since we're talking about high accuracy, how does that square using a non-conformal map projection?
Well, that's why we include, because Web Mercator is still based on WGS84 datum, so we would want to. Well, you mean probably the spheroid?
No, which one? Which WGS84?
2008? Do you know?
So even the WGS84, like which one, like ITF, kind of relate to ITF OA and those kind of things?
There are several WGS84.
Yeah, different realizations.
And it has changed dramatically. So we're talking about high accuracy, and we're using a non-conformal map projection.
Yep.
And you talked about centimeter level position.
So the audience asks questions about, because the Web Mercator is no conform, then how can you really talking about the high accuracy stuff? The location you get is let long, and then so when you do the different projections, the accuracy is not lost. I mean, for let long you get, because the projection you project to this, right?
Yes, but you can't answer which WGS84 you're in. So the latitude and longitude is based on that ellipsoid, but that ellipsoid's position has changed, and G1762 is the current one.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, gentlemen, I don't know how you can talk about high accuracy if you don't know which ellipsoid you're talking about.
Maybe we can talk offline a little bit, and then also we can invite like Marita and then the ROP, and then they are glue of the data transformations, and then we can discuss more about these issues.
So just a couple of points on that. So what we demonstrated today in terms of setting up the location profile is using our base maps, which are based in Web Mercator. There is no requirement for you to use our base maps. If you use, for example, if you use base maps that you will project out in local coordinate system, NAD 83 2011, and that's the same, if you want to maintain the best accuracy you can, you don't want to have any datum transformations at all. So you're going to set up your feature classes to be NAD 83. You're going to project, when you publish those services, your services are going to be published in NAD 83. You're going to use your base maps that are in NAD 83. And so there is no transformations coming through there. Now, and Morgan talked about the specifics of the realization of WGS 84. I don't have the details that we can get that for you, but I think that we can take offline. But there are certainly capabilities. If you want to maintain the centimeter level accuracy, you can absolutely do that and take datum transformations completely out of the equation. So the accuracy you get from the receiver is maintained throughout and stored.
I will say one more thing and I'll shut up. I promise.
It's okay.
I will talk to you later.
That'd be great.
When you say there's no transformation, that is not correct because GPS is in WGS 84 G1762. So NAD 83 2011 is a transformation.
Yes.
Okay, now you guys go ahead.
Yeah, you're
I'll
right.
shut up.
Let's handle
Can you speak to versioning as far as collector is concerned? So if you have multiple users offline, when they come back online, how is that data then brought back together?
Okay, you want to answer?
So maybe your question is not directly related to the hierarchy, but I can answer. So the user's question is about how the character deal with the versioning databases, and in these cases, is the list for questions. Okay, so for character, we support a versioning databases, and then the versioning there's a two-way of version. One is when you publish data with the versioning, and then when collector download it, there's a two-way of download version. One is a version per download, the other is version per user. So you set the version per user, then for each user when they sign in, when they download it, they will have their own individual version for each user. So maybe for more details, maybe we can talk offline about this topic.
I'm excited to see that the Z values are going to start being supported in 2018, it looks like, according to one of your slides there.
Yes.
I'm assuming with that, we'll have to apply a vertical transformation, and there will be an option for that in there. Is that correct?
Do you want to talk about the GIS?
Yeah, so the question was, if it looks like in 2018 we're going to start supporting Z-values on the geometry, will that also mean that we would start supporting vertical transformations? The answer is yes, we will start supporting those when we support the Z's. So as you are defining that location profile, right now you're defining the horizontal datum transformation, you'll also be defining the vertical as well.
Maybe the guy.
The question was, do we have a target release date for the Z-value support? Just early 20. Well, we're targeting earlier part of 2018, Q2. So that's what we're targeting for, because we have the vertical transformation that is wrapped into that. So it's not just about tacking the Z-value onto the geometry. It's also about converting it correctly. So it's a little more, complex.
Maybe
one more thing.
Tied into that as well, will that also be part of ArcGIS Online, starting to support the editing of Z-values at that same point? Is that?
So the follow-on question was, does that also change how ArcGIS Online Map Viewer currently deals with Z-values? Are those editable? I'm not sure about that. Right now, for Collector, the limitation is on our underlying ArcGIS runtime. We're in the process of building the next generation of Collector, and this is what's going to add support for that. A couple of things just to note. We are going to be running a beta program starting this fall. It won't necessarily have Z support and plus high accuracy at the initial beta release, but it is something that we'd like you guys to participate in and give us feedback, especially for many of you who have already used Collector. So we'll be publishing lots of blog posts and other things about that, but I did want to mention that we do want that feedback.
Yes, please.
I'd like to know with the Leica Z20, is the process pretty much the same as we saw today? And that will basically pick it up as an integrated receiver?
Yeah, so the question was about specifically with the Leica Z20 and if the workflows that we demoed are basically the same. Yes, it does. I mean, as far as the screens you've seen, it's going to resemble more of a phone than a tablet, but all the same functionality is in. It's running Android, so it'll function just like if you're working in Android and iOS or Windows. So to answer your question, as far as what we've shown, yes, it will.
Maybe just the only difference is for you using Z20, the integrated receiver is already high accuracy one, so you don't need to add another receiver, etc. So the only difference will be there one. Other than that will be similar.
Yes, please.
Yes, I've been using ArcPad for the past 8 years pretty successfully. Is Collector a replacement for ArcPad? And if not, what are the advantages of using Collector over ArcPad?
So I don't want to say it's a replacement for ArcPad because ArcPad is its own product. It's just that it's plugged into more areas of ArcGIS than say ArcPad is. ArcPad is more of kind of an outside in, whereas we're integrated more directly with ArcGIS Online, services that you already may have used, and kind of more integrated with the online organization. Let me try. I just lost my thought. So do you want to talk a little more about it?
I mean, I think ultimately we do expect, and as we've continued to develop Collector, we do expect that many folks will transition from ArcPad to Collector. So, the high accuracy components, offline ability, these are all things that over the past few years we've been adding to Collector to allow people who are working on some older systems to be able to move, utilize the smartphones, utilize some of these external receivers, and ultimately make it easier to deploy. And more cost-effective in some cases. So we do expect people to do it, although we don't have, we certainly are continuing to support ArcPad. It's not getting the same level of development resources as Collector.
Sounds good, thank you.
Sure.
As a follow-up to that, you confirmed yesterday that for features that we cannot occupy, maybe 50 feet away or 100 feet away, we can get a good position, and that Collector does not provide the technology to offset to it. With our friend's inquiry a moment ago, does ArcPad provide that?
That's a good question. So, and I don't know the answer offhand, so I'm going to ask these guys. But just to repeat the question, so we talked about yesterday. We had talked briefly about offsets. And the fact that currently Collector does not support offsets, although that is on our development roadmap. Does ArcPad support offsets? And I'm pretty sure it does. Okay. Kevin will confirm that it does.
It does support rangefinders.
Yeah, so laser rangefinder.
Yes, it does. Okay. It has a predefined list you can pick from.
So just since we're all here and you guys can give us feedback, how many people are interested in using offsets? Okay. How many people are interested in using offsets using a laser rangefinder? Okay. How many people are using laser tech rangefinders? Okay, a few of you. Okay. It'd be great if you guys don't mind coming up after the session and telling us which ones you're using. That is something that, there's a wide variety of receivers, rangefinders out there. We'd like to support the ones that you guys use. So.
It's in a place that's life-threatening, and so that would be really useful.
Thanks for that feedback.
I just purchased Leica Z20 a couple weeks ago, and I'm interested in networking with anyone else because this is a very small community of people who are starting to use high-accuracy GPS, and there will be a lot of hard work to get it started. So if anyone's interested in networking and talking about this equipment, have a forum that you can suggest to us that already exists on your ArcGIS website? Perhaps we could know where to go to talk.
Okay, so this audience suggests because ArcGIS kind of need like a lot of some knowledge about these things, and also communities. Right now maybe it's relatively small, maybe it's growing, so it'd be good to kind of collaborate in some ways. And he can ask, so maybe what's the best way to maybe work together? And one maybe because in GeoNet we have a character repo and a character like branches. Maybe this is one option. Other than that, I'm not sure if you don't have any other places to suggest.
Yeah, I think as Morgan mentions, I think the GeoNet forum community is probably the best one. But we do have other events. For example, today, following this at noon, there's a mobile special interest group. That's another great place, as long as we're, especially at these types of events where you can meet other people who are doing some of those same things. We do try and blog quite a bit as well, and we invite comments and feedback. Sometimes there's connections made there as well. But I would start with GeoNet.
What about post-processing with Collector? I know Trimble, with mobile and ArcPad, they've got the plugins.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in Collector now to capture the metadata for post-processing?
So this user asked for like kind of what's our consideration of GPS post-processing support. So currently, Collector only support like the real time, and then we also see kind of different trend. One is in the real time side, a lot of more options coming out, like the different type of PPP services, like the RTX, and all kind of options available, and then accuracy and more constellation, etc. So the yield of the good location from real time is more and more. On the other hand, we maybe still see some situations like you cannot really find a good locations, and then we might need to use the post-processing. And then I think like maybe some difficulty for the post-processing part is like how to talk to each devices and then record the raw data from each receiver. That part may be some technical challenge from us to write a support of multiple vendors. And maybe after the talk, you can come upstairs and share like your experience, and then we can talk more about these options.
So the one additional thing to mention there, so in the metadata, the lat-long location we're recording is the raw position that is coming from the receiver. So if you did want to use that as input for post-processing, you could do that.
Yes, please. What about snapping feature? So the question was about snapping support. Right now, currently in Collector, we don't have the ability to snap to a feature. But like in your case, what would be a use case for snapping? Just like how for lines, for water mains and sewers, maybe? Like how would you, in your case, use snapping? Just so we know.
In a place and I want to start editing with one new line.
Okay.
I would like to snap to the next feature, like
Okay.
the building.
Okay.
Many users are required for this.
Yeah.
They're asking now.
So this is on our development roadmap. But having more information from you guys about what you want to do, and it's good. Thank you for sharing that, because that is similar to many cases. Many customers have had that same requirement. It is on our roadmap. It won't be until probably late next year that we would be able to look at it. Just a bit of a plug. It's certainly in addition to the GeoNet communities, there's the ArcGIS Ideas Forum. Hopefully many of you are already using it. That is we do pay very close attention to what people are saying on there and what they're asking for in Collector. So that's a great way for us to get feedback from you and to know where we should spend our development energy. So take advantage of that, as well as just talking to us here this week about any use cases that you have.
To be a part of the data program. You mentioned
I'll let you take that.
So the question was, how can we be part of the beta program? So we will advertise that beta program in our blogs. If you follow our blog posts, we'll certainly be sharing it there. We'll also blog out, have Twitter notifications. Probably, I don't know if there'll be others, but that's certainly something. If you're interested, please, if you've got a card, swing by after the session. We can take your name and then certainly reach out to you at that point. But we will be, doing a lot of announcements. We'd like to get as many of you involved as we can.
Yes, please.
So I'm hearing more about collector versus iOS. Does collector supports Windows or Android? And how easy to customize that?
I mean, collector is supported on all 3 operating systems: Windows 10, iOS, and Android. So is your question about how to further continue support? Or?
Yeah, customizing or adding profiles.
I mean, it works the same on all 3 platforms with the location profile configuration, the different settings that Morgan demoed. He actually demoed it on Windows. And so then we can, so we support on all 3 platforms the same way. The same logic is on all 3 operating systems for those areas. Okay. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Yes, please. Yes, we'll be in the apps island. Just come and ask us any questions you have. Sure, no problem. Yes, please.
We've got everything set up correctly. We've got the metadata field set.
Okay.
We're getting good metadata. And we're showing RTK fix in the GPS badge thing. But we're consistently never getting a horizontal and vertical accuracy that's realistic. I mean, it's always showing 20, 30 meters for both. And the point's right on. You can see in our map exactly where it's at. It just doesn't seem like it's getting some kind of information from the unit or something.
Okay.
We've got the profile set up to do the transformation and all that. I'm not really quite sure where else to look at.
Okay.
So the user asked the question, is he already set a location profile, etc. And then for some reason, and also the location is right long, but for some reason the accuracy report it is like a few meters. It's not like some centimeters, etc. So one consideration it is you may use the receiver output the NEMA, and then there's a multiple sentence. There's one sentence type is report the accuracy. It's called GST sentences. If these sentences is not available from a receiver, and character won't be able to understand what's the accuracy report from a receiver. If in those cases happens, then character will have some way kind of a rough estimate the accuracy from the receiver. But rough estimate is quite possibly will be a few some meters. So the way to check, you will need to check the NEMA from your receivers and check the configuration is available or not.
So if we can chat a little bit more one-on-one about your particular case after, if that's all right with you. So we can look at what kind of receiver you're using, because often, like what Morgan said, a lot of receivers may not output the GST sentence through NEMA, and then we fall back to estimated accuracy. So you would see in your badge EST next to your measurements. If you're seeing that, then that's what's happening in this case. If you're not seeing that and it's still not reporting right, then there may be some other area we need to look at with you.
It doesn't say EST.
Okay.
The vertical and horizontal is it's not even a couple meters. It's 20, 30 meters.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we need, yeah. So
maybe we can check more about the receiver you use, etc.
Yeah, we'll troubleshoot it with you. Sure.
What are you going to be doing in your collector beta coming up? Different than what you have in collector now?
Yes, our beta that's coming out is going to be, and that Doug was referring to, is going to be our new collector design. And I'll let Doug speak a little bit more on that.
So there's the next generation of collector is really this beta program we're talking about. There's many things that we know you guys have asked us about supporting over the years for collector, things like labels, things like vector-based maps. So it's not all related to high accuracy, but there are a pretty wide range of improvements from a better mapping side, better symbology, et cetera, better forms, We're talking about additional support for things like QR codes, barcodes, as input types as well. But there's also a new user experience that we're building there. We've learned a lot. You guys have told us what you like, what you don't like, with the version of Collector you have today. So it's sort of a pretty broad-based beta. So we'll have a lot to go, and we'll be releasing multiple betas into next year, and adding features as we go along. And high accuracy support will be one of those that we'll be including. So having your feedback for that would be good.
Any possibility of high accuracy support for Survey 123?
I know that I'm not sure if that's on. I believe that's on their roadmap, but you'd have to chat specifically with that team to know in more depth about what they're planning on doing with respect to high accuracy support. I believe that is something that they're planning on doing, but I just don't have specific details about what that entails for that app.
And I think you can get some level of high accuracy support. Basically, you can make Collector and Survey 123 work in tandem.
That's true.
And you can get high accuracy in Survey 123 as well. And there's a blog article published on ESY site.
Yeah, I can show you that. It's called like customizing Survey 123 with custom schema. Basically, you just add a schema to your pop-up, and it just launches a form from Survey 123. So it's like app integration more or less from a link from Collector, and so you can kind of get the seamless use of both, to leverage both apps. So you can do that now, which I can show you that GeoNet post.
All right, and thank you for attending these sections.
Yes, thank you everyone, and if you have any more questions, we'll be down at the island to come and ask us. So, thank you.